So first of all, I'd like to introduce Dave Engberg, who's the CTO of Evernote, which is a cloud-based note-taking platform with over 100 million users, and it's changing the way that we process, share, and remember information. We've never actually had a CTO speak before, so I guess the first question is pretty easy, but what do you do as a CTO, and what is the part that you like best and least about being a CTO?
CTO is kind of a BS title. Like it can kind of mean anything. Basically, what it probably means is that you were there at the beginning of a company. You had a friend, and she was the one who was willing to like talk to people who would invest money, and she was willing to like help design the product and get office space. And you were the one who was responsible for building the infrastructure, building the product, and getting it shipped. Then once you went from like 2 people to 3 people to 4 people to 5 people, like being there at the beginning, you get to make up really fancy titles. You get to be the super high admiral or whatever you want, and like CTO is the title that just sort of sticks around. So if you meet someone who's from a company that's got 300 employees and they're the CTO, it generally means that they were the most technical person when the company got started, and that's kind of where I'm at. Generally, at that stage, what you're doing completely depends. Like it's not like head of finance where you are responsible for doing the books and getting the numbers and everything else. It's super general. So at Evernote. Currently, I've got engineering working for me. I've got the people who run our servers. I've got the security team. I've got the IT team that run all of our computers. But in different companies, it's going to vary. I generally enjoy most doing the actual technical stuff, and I think that's what you'll find is that the people who come out of a technical background, like they like to actually touch the stuff. The parts that get to be tough for someone like me at a larger company is the stuff like running a company. Like what is the right frequency for which you do performance reviews, and how should you do, how should you lay out the seating plan of the office, stuff like that can be a little bit tiring because it's you don't get to play with the technology as much. It's really funny. I get to go hang out at dinners for like CTOs and vice presidents of engineering once in a while, and at first I thought those gatherings would all be about technical questions, like what do you use for source control management? Is it GitHub or is it? It turns out everybody just sits around and like complains and stresses about people. Like really, like at a medium large size company, it's all people problems. It's all like how do you keep people happy? How do you recruit in the valley? And generally like the people stuff tends to be less in the wheelhouse of technical introverts like me. So you have to find it within yourself to solve those problems.
On your LinkedIn profile, you call yourself an order muppet, which I think is an interesting term. What skills and personal qualities do you think are important to be successful in the tech industry?
Yeah, I generally feel like in a successful company, you're going to have a mix of people. You're going to have some people, like I said, who are willing to go hang out with investors and get money, and some people who are going to keep the trains running. In our companies, I've tried to be the person who keeps the trains running on time. I see my job as making our company not fail, and then the people who design the awesome products, like their job is to make us successful. You can have a very significant role within technology on either end of the spectrum, but you should be self-aware enough to know which side you're on. Like, if you really like sitting around and getting that last like 1% of performance out of a database, and you're willing to plow away on it for a week to get there, like you're probably on the order muppet side of the spectrum. Whereas if like you don't really want to sweat the details, you really want to like talk about stuff and wave your hands a lot, you're a little more on the chaos muppet, and you have to find an order muppet to make you successful. I love working in technology. I like building things, and I keep going to companies. Don't have anyone working for me on day one. Build it up, do a lot of things, hire a bunch of people, and then do something else. Generally, at the early stage of a company, your job is to build things, and then a little later on, you've got 100 employees at the company, and you suddenly have to decide that the company needs someone who doesn't just build things, but builds a company that builds things. You have to be willing to manage people. I haven't typed a line of code in probably a month because nobody lets me anymore, and that's a tough transition, and not everybody wants to make it. And so at the medium later stages of your career, you kind of have to decide: do I want to keep typing into code? Do I want to keep building 3D models, or do I want to help mentor other people, recruit people, build a structure that can do that for me? Not everybody wants to go into the management route. I know some really smart people. There's this great senior engineer at our company that used to have my type of job somewhere else, and he didn't like it. He wanted to just sit down and program, and that's something that you have to discover within yourself once you've been working in the field for a while, is whether you want to go down the dark side and manage a bunch of people, or whether you actually want to keep doing things hands-on.
So this is a question we ask most of our speakers. I think it's especially relevant to kind of like the age group that's present here. But if you could journey back in time, what advice would you give to your teenage self?
Yeah, there's a few like really smart people, like Peter Thiel is this guy from PayPal founder, who they say like, hey, don't go to college, just go start a company, and that's like fantastic advice for probably like one of the people in this room. For the rest of you, doesn't make much sense. Generally, like next steps, go to college and learn the fundamentals of the craft that you want to do. So if you want to do computer programming, like learn how a computer works at a lower level. Don't just like figure out how you can quickly get demos together on an iPhone or on PHP. Like that's all important, but like if you don't understand what's actually happening under the covers, how computers actually work, how technology actually works, you hit walls that'll be really tough. So like learn the technical craft of what you want to do, but then like expose yourself to the rest of the things that college would have to offer. You know, that like take some humanities classes, take some art classes. Like generally, those aren't going to directly help you in your tech job on a day-to-day basis, but it's going to make it so that when you're hanging around with other people, they actually find you kind of interesting and they want to work with you. They want to be partners with you. They want to be successful with you, and finding people that you will be successful with, that you respect, that they respect you, that you complement each other well, is the most important thing for your first 5-10 years out of college. Is not maximizing your income on the first year out of college, but finding the skills and finding the people that you want to work with, so that when you're in your 30s, you are launching companies and you're doing really exciting things.
What do you think are some of the exciting things that Evernote will allow us to do in the future?
Yeah, I don't want to turn this into a big Evernote sales pitch, but I guess that in general in the industry 10, 15 years ago, that the challenges were sort of mechanical. Like how can you get enough information into computers so that you actually could have a database that you could search. Now the quantities of information that Evernote's dealing with or that Google's dealing with are so large that the problems become more about the job category tends to be like machine learning or data science. It's like how do you take these vast amounts of information and actually make them useful to people, and not just like having explicit search interfaces where you type words and find things, but actually like helping you get access to information before you know you need it. It's a really, really hard problem. You've all seen things where you're using some product like Facebook or whatever, and it starts suggesting stuff at you, and you're like, well, this is stupid. Like, I don't actually want this thing that you're trying to expose to me at this moment. But when it's done right, it's kind of magical, and I think that's a challenge that we have in a lot of people in the industry. And if you're looking at jobs in technology, that is a particular area where like it's really hot right now, and it'll still be big in 10 years when you're out there. And is actually like knowing how to take really huge amounts of data and make them sort of subtly active in people's lives without having them have to explicitly go and do things against that information.
Some people describe Evernote as a unicorn. Would you explain what this means, kind of, and what you see the challenges for Evernote as it continues to grow? And also, in a more general sense, what do you think makes a tech company successful in the long term?
Yeah. So the unicorn thing's kind of funny. So when you have a company that is privately owned by individuals and by small investors, and it's not available on public stock exchanges, like then the actual value of the company, the price of the company, is really hard to determine, and it's sort of whoever is investing right now is setting a value. The term unicorn is something that the press made up for companies who theoretically have a value of $1 billion or more. That is kind of fluff, and anyone at a company who is like obsessing about that sort of thing is worrying about the wrong thing. Generally, though, I guess what it is it's a reflection that right now in the industry, like we are all extremely fortunate. Like if you go work in technology, any job you get, you will be able to have a decent rent and pay off your college loans and everything else. Like the interns who are coming as juniors in college to come work at Evernote are making more than my parents who had master's degrees and were public high school teachers made in their entire career. So like you are extremely fortunate right now, and that is a reflection of the impact that companies like Evernote can have with a relatively small number of people and with a relatively small amount of investment. And the whole unicorn thing is sort of the real story there is just that it's so straightforward for people now to take a good idea, take a small team, do a bunch of hard work, get lucky, and have a lot of impact in the world. And I think that's more interesting than like the value part of the story. I know plenty of folks who are investors. I know how they look at things if they're trying to find someone to invest in. If you don't know what that's like, you kind of assume it's all about the idea. Like, hey, I've got this like fantastic idea for making aluminum that's transparent, and like the idea will fund itself. When you go and talk to someone and ask them to give you money, like having a nice idea is definitely that's good. Like it'll get you in the door. But really, at that stage, what they're looking for is the team. Do you have a set of people that they believe will still be able to keep things going, keep things successful, so that a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, the value of their investment is realized. That gets back to what I was saying about like what you should be optimizing for in your early career. It should be finding people that you actually respect and trust and that complement you well, that you can work with, because then that team can go in, get some funding, and actually make something real in the world. If your first job is just about maximizing your paycheck at an investment bank and you don't want to do investment banking for your life, that's fine, but you're kind of in the hole for the next thing you want to do because you can't demonstrate a great team that can pull it off.
Would you share some of your thoughts on how you think tech could or should be used for social change? For example, what do you think are responsibilities on sharing data, social media communication, privacy, and encryption on a personal, community-based, or corporate level, if any? And do you think that tech companies have or should have different ideas about social responsibility than other industries?
Yeah, that's a great, very topical question. I personally believe that like putting moral obligations on corporate structures is a little bit weird. Like I think that's not the right granularity, but getting back to the individual, I think is extremely important. Like I said, no matter what you do in the tech industry or just with a technology job in general, you are going to get paid well enough to pay off your bills and everything else. So you have the flexibility and potentially the obligation to decide what you want to do with a lot more flexibility than someone who like you only have one coal mine in your company, in your county that you could possibly work at. So you have that flexibility, and you have to decide what you want to do with it. You aren't being forced to do things that you think are skeezy. There's this guy who was I think he was at Facebook, and then he ended up starting this company called Cloudera, Jeffrey Converbacher, where he's famous for having said in an interview that the best minds of our generation are trying to make people click on ads. And that's kind of true. Like a lot of people working in technology, like I don't want to judge that. That's not evil. But on the other hand, like it's pretty easy to kind of end up going down that route where you are using your skills not necessarily for evil, but you're using it for kind of meh. No one's forcing you to do that. But you have the options. I personally feel like you should find something that you believe is at least not evil and is probably gives you some meaning, like that you think has some value to the world that's slightly positive. I feel like Evernote isn't, we're not curing cancer, but we are trying to make something that's relatively useful. It's available for free in the world. Like that is enough for me to feel like it's meaningful. You can pick your own bar, but like I said, the material constraints are gone now for this industry, and you can choose. You have the ability to choose something that has meaning to you.
On the theme of kind of the journey and your journey, your personal journey, of all the people you've met and the situations that have kind of occurred during your career, what's your favorite tech story that you can share with us?
Oh boy, that one's pretty broad. I'll give you one. So the tech industry goes through booms and busts. Like this is very well known. And like there's a huge bust in 2001, and in 2008 we just launched Evernote. We had this great internet service. We had a few dozen people working on it, and things were really going great. We were kind of running out of funding, but we had this funding round coming in from this big Russian investor that they committed, and they were doing all this due diligence, and everything was going great. But then the global market crashed. They did not have the money to actually pay us what they were obligated to pay us. So we were down to about 1 month left of funding. We had no, we were very, very close to basically telling everybody they had to go home. We couldn't pay them anymore and turning off the service. Our CEO, Phil, was sitting around in the middle of the night stressing about this because when you're running a company, you feel responsible for the people that you're working with. And we were down to about 2 or 3 weeks of funding, and he get this random email from an Evernote customer in Sweden that said, "Hey, I'd like your product. I happen to be an investor. Are you taking investments right now?" And he's like, "Yes, we are." And it turned out this guy just like loved our product so much, loved our company, and he gave us, I think, $500,000, which got us through a few months until we could get the next round of funding. That was like really exciting because we didn't have to fire everybody and sell off the furniture, but also like that was a demonstration that like building something that was meaningful to people, like that has benefits over time that you can't always predict. Like that person would not have been as excited to give us money if we had been building something that wasn't as meaningful to him.
Since the theme for this event is kind of how tech can have a global impact on the world,
Yep.
I noticed that you're involved with the United Nations Academic Impact Initiative as an advisor to Verdentum. So what's your involvement with Verdentum, and what are they trying to accomplish?
So I attended an event a little bit like this at Berkeley a couple of years ago, and Rohit was there he's the head of Verdentum. He was there as a grad student, and he was putting together this thing called Verdentum, which would allow students in classrooms in different countries to be able to do projects and coordinate with people, with classrooms in other countries. So you could have a program about ecology in a classroom in India that coordinates with one in Orange County and can make the global impact of what you're doing a little bit more real. My involvement has been fairly small. I provide whatever help I can to Rohit, but really like he and his team of volunteers are doing all that. If anyone wants to go to verdentum.org, learn a little bit more. If you'd like to be connected with Rohit, just send me an email. The easiest email address to use would be CTO@evernote.com. Will get to me, and I'm happy to connect you up. I think like most of the folks who end up in tech, you're stop me if this sounds familiar. You're one of the smartest kids in your high school. You kind of like playing some computer games, or maybe you just like building things on computers, and you have the ability to make things out of nothing that didn't exist before. Like that's cool. Like that's where you start out, and then you go to college and you have a lot of things that are available to you. You could get a comparative literature degree. You could get a computer degree, and generally, like if you're good at computers, that is a very straightforward path to go down. Is just get better at computers, and you can get a good job right out of school, and things are straightforward. I like the impact that technology gives today to individuals and to small teams. Like, if I was going to go into civil engineering, like I would love to build the next Bay Bridge. That is a 30-year project, and I would be able to do 0.01% of it, and I would be extremely proud to drive across that bridge when I'm done. But it's unfair, but computer people right now can just affect such change so quickly with such a small team, so many resources. We have so much leverage right now that it's just an unbelievably unique time in the history of humanity of how much impact a small group of people can have.